This is Bengals Breakdown, NFL Combine Special on Fox 19 Now.
It is a big week of Bengals talk, so we carved out 30 extra minutes of TV time to talk about the Bengals and the NFL Combine. This is the Bengals Breakdown Combine Special. Jeremy Rao, Joe Danneman, Gabby Sorrentino, and Reagan Holgate will report from Indianapolis. James Rapine, hot take James, and his first three names to remember for the Bengals in the first round. That's in this show. And two Bearcats at the Combine. Let's do Bengals Breakdown, the Combine edition.
If you take nothing else away from this, just know this. Because we are the Bengals flagship station, if anything Bengals is happening, we can make a special out of it, okay?
We're here.
The next 30 minutes
To do that.
we are here for you. Here we go. Of all the unknowns going into the offseason, there is one thing we know for sure. The Bengals have the 17th overall pick in the draft in late April. So first things first, a look at the Bengals' history at number 17. It's happened 4 times. Safe to say 2 of these picks were pretty successful. Drake Kirkpatrick, I think yes. David Pollock, a bad break. Brian Simmons, check the numbers, yes. Jason Buck showed signs, but not so much. Just a brief history lesson to get us going. But the Bengals don't want to be 17 again like Zac Efron. So let's kick off the show with Duke Tobin at the Combine and why this team is driven to be aggressive.
4th and 16 against Kansas City. You know, that's one play. We win one game. Now we're in the playoffs. But that's countless games throughout the year, whether it's our offense converting a first down to run the clock out to win the game, whether it's our special teams converting a field goal to win the game, but multiple times a fumble going into the end zone, all the things that happened. It was a crazy year. We're a championship level team that didn't get an opportunity, and that irritates us. It irritates all of us. It irritates our fans, and we're not happy about it. And we're going to attack the offseason to make sure it doesn't happen again.
The list is long on projections for what the Bengals might do with that 17th pick. Any one of these guys could be lucky enough to play with the guy on your left there, Joe Burrow. Let's start with Walter Nolan, interior defensive lineman, viewed as a could-be day one starter. I know Bengals fans love that. Kenneth Grant, look up his film against Ohio State. Monster DT, gives, as the kids say, DJ Reader. How about Jahdae Barron, depending on how you pronounce it, won the Thorpe Award as college football's best DB. He was pretty darn good against Ohio State as well. Colston Loveland, a tight end in the first round. Who knows? It might sound hot. Maybe James Rapine likes it. Joe D, take it away.
Okay, we are back with James Rapine of Cincinnati Bengals Talk on YouTube and also the Bengals Locked On podcast. This time we're going to dive into what James does, I think, as well as anybody here in the Cincinnati area, and that is dive into the NFL draft and what the Bengals have to do in the draft, and he's always got a hot take. So let's start there. Let's go big, James, right off the bat. What is the hot take you have for the Bengals in the upcoming draft?
Well, everyone's talking about defense, and certainly, I totally get it. You're focused on defense. You're focused on the offensive line. The Bengals have 6 picks in this year's draft. I guarantee they use one of them on a running back, and I guarantee they use one of them on a tight end. 2 skill players right there.
Whoa.
Boom, out of the 6 picks.
Now, there's a thought they might keep Mike Gesicki. Certainly, I think you want them to keep Mike Gesicki. But is your thought that Mike Gesicki is more wide receiver than he is tight end?
Absolutely. You saw what Eric All brought, and it's really unfortunate that they're not going to have him this year, and his football future is just in question overall. And so you need that. You need to find another young tight end, and this is just a great class for it. My motto this time of year, Joe, is you draft players, not positions. And I know a lot of people are focused on defense, and it's a great defensive line draft, so they'll address it. But I would be shocked if the best player available isn't a tight end at some point. And the same thing goes for running back as well.
Okay, so let's go right there then. What's the highest, if you were the Bengals, you would use on a running back? Bengals pick 17th overall. Would you go as high as the first round to take a running back even though they have Chase Brown?
I see, this is where people are going to roll their eyes, but I wouldn't rule it out in early March. And the reason why you can't rule it out in early March is, what if Ashton Jeanty from Boise State, who's widely considered a top 5 player in this class, is suddenly there at 17? And you have him as a top 5 player on your board, and the next closest guy is 15th on your board. Do you deviate from your board that much? And so, no, I wouldn't rule it out. I wouldn't rule out running back or tight end in the first round. I think there's two draftable first-round tight ends minimum, and Colston Loveland out of Michigan, and then you have Tyler Warren out of Penn State. And so one of those three guys, whether it's Genty, Warren, Loveland, I think all three would be in the mix at 17. That doesn't mean they would take them. Would be pretty surprised if they went against their board if there's a top defensive lineman there. And whether it's a tackle or an edge rusher, they can use both. We know they need to be able to get more pressure on opposing quarterbacks. So I do think that if I had to handicap the most likely scenario at 17 today, it would be either a defensive tackle or a defensive end.
And that's where it feels like where we are as people who cover this team or cover the NFL draft. We're looking at positions in early March, maybe not necessarily some of the big names the Bengals might take, but do you have 2 or 3 names that Bengals fans should think about here the next 5 or 6 weeks before the NFL draft?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because you look at some of these guys, and James Pierce Jr. is someone out of Tennessee who looks like he should be able to bring you the juice. And Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss is someone on the interior that will probably be pretty tempting if he's there at 17. Another name out of Michigan is Kenneth Grant, and he's more of a DJ Reader nose tackle type, a big body type. And the question I have for him is, okay, well, do the Bengals think that he can play all 3 downs, or is he more of a 2-down lineman? Because if he's a 2-down guy, you're probably not taking him in the first round. If you think he can get after the passer a little bit, then that's exactly what you're looking for.
Well, this was the first conversation James and I have had that wasn't about Steph Curry in about a month. He's always gracious with his time. He knows what he's talking about. The great James Rapien. Follow him, YouTube, also the Bengals Locked On podcast. He does great work. Bengals fans love him. That's why we had him on the show. James, thanks.
Thanks, Joe.
A-plus kind of stuff. A very large crowd gathered around Duke Tobin at the Combine. Very few questions about what the Bengals will actually do in the draft. Zach Taylor called it champagne problems. Can the Bengals bottle up the big 3 for a champagne supernova? You know you love the song, Joe.
I do.
Gabby and Reagan join the show next from the Combine.
This is Bengals Breakdown, NFL Combine Special
It's very exciting.
on
I'm
Fox
very
19
fortunate, like
now.
I said, just what other worlds would I want to be but here. Honestly, like I said, I'm very blessed to fall at number 18 pick to Cincinnati Bengals, and I'm looking forward to it, getting around the guys, meeting everybody, you know, and winning some games, man.
I'm just going to say there are sometimes the Bengals have a first-round pick, I won't name names, and they walk into the room and you think, I don't know, man. Not Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, obviously. But there are some where you're wondering, was this the right pick? Amarius Mims, I think we both knew instantly, not just his size, this dude belongs, and he's going to be a dude in the NFL. Played in 15 games his rookie season, started 13. He is the anchor at right tackle, ready, locked in for the future for the Bengals right now.
So it's interesting at the NFL Combine, typically you're focused on what the Bengals might do with their draft picks. Mm-hmm. This last week, for 1 week, Duke Tobin felt like the Dos Equis guy, the most interesting man in the NFL.
Yes.
Aren't the Bengals the most interesting team of the offseason?
They very much are.
With the big 3, What are they going to do with the contracts of Trey, T, and Jamar? Gabby and Reagan anchor our coverage from the NFL Combine in Indy.
Hey guys, Gabby Sorrentino and Reagan Holgate here at the Indiana Convention Center for the 2025 NFL Combine. The Bengals have the 17th pick in the NFL draft this year, but this year seemed a little different here at the Combine for the Bengals. Not as much talk about the draft prospects and the draft this year, but of course, a big crowd around Duke Tobin and Zach Taylor to talk mostly about the Bengals offseason moves. And of course, that's keeping Jamar Chase, Trey Hendrickson, and T. Higgins on the Bengals next season, something that QB1 Joe Burrow has been really vocal about this offseason. Duke and Zach both said that they're happy that their quarterback has been that vocal, and Reagan, that they've had conversations with him this offseason. But both Duke Tobin and Zach saying that they do have a priority number 1 this offseason.
and that is re-signing T. Higgins to a long-term deal. Look, Duke adding, obviously, that T's contract is the first to expire here, so they want to make sure they get that deal done. That is the highest of priorities for them. Then, of course, Jamar Chase and both Trey Hendrickson. But another thing that I want to add, too, is another player that Duke Tobin also talked about, Mike Gesicki, being a very high priority. I even said I think Joe Burrow likes those words because he has been very vocal about wanting to keep that tight end in the Bengals locker room. So, of course, a lot of talk here about the moves that the Bengals have to make in the offseason. We've said it so much, but it feels like this could be one of the most historic in franchise history. But now we want to send it to Duke Tobin and head coach Zach Taylor to hear more from them about the moves they have to make.
Obviously, T is the one that's not signed for the future right now, and so that puts the onus on us to do something there one way or the other earlier. Jamar is always going to be our priority. He's a fantastic football player. He's going to end up being the number one paid non-quarterback in the league. We're there. Let's get it done. The earlier we can do some of this stuff, the freer it gives us to build the rest of the team. We have other needs that we want to build, and so we want to get these kind of things done early enough to where we can really focus on building out the rest of the football team. But they're all priorities to us. But the ones that aren't signed are the ones that are on the table first.
T. Higgins, same time, working on a long-term deal with him. We want T around here, not just next year, but in the future. And T's been a big part of all the wins that we've had and keeping defenses accountable so Jamar can have his best days and Joe can have his best days and T. And so, again, that's a trio that we want to keep together, and we feel like we're best when we have those guys.
And Reagan, you just mentioned the word historic to describe this Bengals offseason. And get this, Zach Taylor at the podium saying Jamar Chase is the guy, and we want to make him the highest paid non-quarterback in the league, which of course would add even more history to this Bengals offseason.
And you know what else Zach said?
What?
These are champagne problems.
Yes,
these are good problems for a franchise to have such great players in your locker room that you want to keep them around. So much more to talk about, but guys, we're going to send it back to you.
So, ladies, this is my memory of last draft weekend.
Oh, yeah.
That's Amarius Mims and Orlando Brown on the day the Bengals introduced Mims as the first-round pick. The Bengals don't need a starting offensive tackle. What else don't they need? It's a bit of a take from me, and I'll take my shot next on the Bengals Combine Special.
If I get knocked down, I'm getting back up, and we coming right back.
You got that look in your eyes, man.
Exactly. Like, we running it back. It's a game of football that I'm blessed to have this opportunity to play, and I want nothing more than to prove every single person here right. And that's my goal.
Welcome back to the NFL Combine Special, Bengals Breakdown Edition. And look, that look in his eyes, man. You know, he was doing the Turkish get-ups before the draft and all that. And just seeing him face to face, right? Chris Jenkins looking him in the eyes and hearing him say, if I get knocked down, I'm getting right back up. And the look in his eyes, I'm like, okay, this is a guy who can wreck some people. We saw flashes of that his rookie season this past year, Joe. Later in the year, more so, but 3 sacks as a rookie, not too bad. And I think he's a guy they can rely on that interior defensive line.
And I think people have to remember that as the Bengals look at pick number 17. A lot of people are saying, hey, draft a defensive tackle or draft a defensive lineman coming from the edge. You got McKinley Jackson and Chris Jenkins. Now, I don't know if either will become a star, but I think both are going to be very good pros. And then if you get a difference maker to pair with them, we don't know if B.J. Hill's going to be back next year.
Sure.
Then you start to build a young defensive line that can really start to be a difference maker for this team. So what will they do in the first round? Well, here's what they've done in the first round in the Zach Taylor era. And I think you could look at this and say there are 2 slam dunk hits, and you can't get it wrong, right? If you have top 5 picks, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, slam dunk hits. Everyone else kind of feels like a mixed bag of pretty good to kind of unknown. Jonah Williams, pretty good. Dax Hill, still kind of unknown.
Yep.
Miles Murphy, still very unknown. And Amarius Mims, we think is going to be very good, but when you only play 1 year, you're still kind of an unknown at this point. And that's what happens when you're not drafting top 5 and you have playoff seasons and you have great records. You draft a little bit deeper, and that's where you really got to lean on scouts your talent evaluators, and you got to start hitting better than the Bengals have in recent years. Not just in the first round, but throughout the entire draft. Okay, so it's time for my take on this. I like your take better than mine, but I'll go here. You're watching T. Higgins. My take is this: do not draft a wide receiver.
Yeah.
The Bengals are good at wide receiver. We all expect T. Higgins to be a Bengal in some shape this coming season, whether it's on the franchise tag. By the way, the deadline to get that done is Tuesday at 4 o'clock, or if he's here on a longer-term deal. Either way, he's going to be here next year, I think. And if you pair him with a Mike Gesicki, who the Bengals want to have back, Joe Burrow wants back, I think you're good at pass-catching options. When you consider Andre Yoshivas is your number 3, he fills the role just fine at number 3. Use the draft picks to draft elsewhere. I think with T. Higgins in the wide receiver room, they're set. They did it last year. I know it didn't work, but that leads into your take.
Okay, so is this the wide receiver take for me?
Go for it.
Okay, so I'll go for it. So mine is, things you do have to do, things you don't have to do. You don't have to reach for someone who seems very talented but has a red flag or two. Jermaine Burton is the rule for that right now for the Bengals, and hopefully a lesson learned. You don't have to reach for a guy like that because your roster is better off, your locker room is better off if you don't do that. You got one other one?
I just wanted to pound the table like Zach.
Pound it.
Pound the table for yourself on that. I liked your other one about guard.
Okay, I'll go with that. You don't have to draft an offensive lineman in the first couple of rounds early in the draft, being they need a guard or two. To me, it's not because they can find one magically later, although I think they could, and they haven't done well at drafting offensive linemen early. It's because they should seek that out in free agency. If you want to say Cody Ford could maybe be one of those spots, that's fine, but at least address that in free agency. Don't go reaching for that in the first couple of rounds.
I agree. They have to get better at guard. Because Alex Kappa likely is going to be cut. Cordell Volson, a lot of people don't think he should be a starter. If you do have Cody Ford, that's one. But the Bengals do have to find a guard who can be a difference maker on the interior. I'm with you. I think that's too high to invest in an interior offensive lineman if you're going first round, maybe even second round. I love the idea of getting that done in free agency with a guy that has proven he can play in this league at that position at the level the Bengals want, to protect him and also make sure he has time to do things like that.
All right, so moving on now, and by the way, one more do have to draft a defensive end because I don't know what's going to happen with Trey. You gotta have it. Now let's talk about the Bearcats. He is a former Ohio Mr. Football and local product who made a huge impact for the Bearcats. You know this. What could he bring to the NFL? You'll get that answer from his head coach, and also another local star on why he wants to play for the hometown Bengals.
The NFL Combine is what it is. It's a lot of running. It's a lot of meeting. It's not a lot of real football stuff. Corey Kiner ran his 40 in the 4.5s. That'll do. But what'll make him a Sunday player is everything that's already on tape. Cool drill here, but pads can't tackle. And it's the so many players who couldn't tackle Corey Kiner that'll make him a could-be day 3 draft pick, I think. GMs don't need the opinion of a local TV guy, but his contact balance at Roger Bacon High School and UC is some of the best I remember watching in person.
He is consistently good every single day. You know what you're going to get out of him. He's going to be a guy who's going to break a lot of tackles. He's going to always strain for the extra yards.
Corey Kiner breaking a tackle, and
he's going to be great on third down in your protections. He's going to fit a linebacker up, put his nose right in the middle of his chest, and block him. And you just know you can count him to get those first downs. And he's also a smart player, so you don't have to sit in there and have to meet with him over and over and over. He's going to pick it up in the first 1 or 2 times you tell him what's going to happen there. So, and he's an outstanding character player.
Corey Kiner isn't the only Bearcat at the Combine. Luke Kandra also got the invite this past week, offensive guard, Elder grad, and John Williams, offensive tackle. We sat down with Luke Kandra ahead of the Combine, and he said he actually seeks out teams, looks for teams who might need a guard. He's aware, and he knows the Bengals might like one. I imagine you're going to have some conversations with the Bengals. What would it mean for you, Luke, to be able to stay home and play for the hometown Bengals?
I mean, it'll be a dream come true to play for the Bengals and really every other team. But, just growing up being a Bengals fan, being in Cincinnati, I always thought about playing for the Bengals, but it's going to be a real real honor playing for them and any other team.
I love that because these guys want to say the right thing. You know, Corey Kiner said the same thing, by the way, on Friday at the Combine. It's like any team is cool, but hometown team would be coolest. I really do wonder. Day 3 is where you're going to find Kandra most likely. The Bengals do need a guard. Where do they look for that depth in the draft? Who knows? We'll see.
Tuesday's a big day, 4 o'clock. The Bengals have to make their decision if they are going to franchise tag T. Higgins by then. We both say yes, they will.
I think they will.
Just a formality at this point. Good night.